We're on the phone today with Mark Jason Murray. He's the author of the new book, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, the authorized biography of Rudy Ray Moore. Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
Dustin, good. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. I appreciate the call.
Well, first of all, you've got a new book in the works. Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, the authorized biography of Rudy Ray Moore. Can you tell the listeners a bit about the upcoming book?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to do a crowdfunding campaign to basically put out kind of a limited special edition for the fans, about almost 400 pages, got over 600 photos, a full-color book. A lot of people are familiar with Rudy now because of the movie Dolomite Is My Name, where Eddie Murphy portrayed him. But that's really just a tiny fraction of his whole story. So this really gives everything from his life, from his escaping poverty and abuse as a child and getting into entertainment, trying any type of entertainment he could, from singing to dancing to comedy to filmmaking, until he finally found something that stuck. It's really an interesting story, so much so that I spent 3 decades putting the whole thing together.
Yeah, you mentioned fundraising, the Kickstarter going on now through April 15th, and you've got all sorts of cool things besides the book. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what we can expect here if you fund to the Kickstarter?
There are some perk packages, including DVDs and bobbleheads and books, LPs, things of that nature. Also, anybody that contributes to it will have their name printed in the book, which I think, personally, if I was on the outside as a fan, it's always really cool to see your name printed in something that you've supported, that you're a big fan of. Example, I'm a huge fan of the band Devo, and I supported that book and got my name in there. So it's kind of like a badge of honor when you see your name in something like that you're the one that helped make that happen.
Definitely, and I'm sure the fundraising will be successful. When do you think the book would be available for the public?
Once the crowdfunding period ends, then there's a short period where the funds are gathered and forwarded to me. There's a couple finalizing things I need to do, just like build the index and get all the supporters' names in there. And then the project's off to the printer. It'll take a couple months for that to be completed, so I'm looking to have it in everybody's hands around August.
Excellent. Well, Mark, I got to ask what led to you becoming the go-to guy when it comes to Rudy Ray Moore. How did that come into your world?
When I was 17 years old, I had a friend call me and say, dude, you have to see this movie. Drove over to his house. He passed a video out his bedroom window, didn't even turn the car off, went back home, and it was Dolomite. He had rented it, and it just blew my mind. It was so insane, and I wasn't completely new to extreme or bizarre cinema even at that early age. So seeing something like that was really an eye-opener. It's, of course, a low-budget film. I've always said it's a movie that you can laugh with and laugh at because some of its low-budget faults that it has. But there's a lot of heart to it. And the audacity of it, in some ways extremity of it, really kind of blew my mind. Just like, well, what in the world did I just watch? And I think a lot of people have had that experience. And I'm curious by nature. If I find something I'm interested in, I want to learn everything there is to know about it. There was nothing available on Rudy Ray Moore. Just all I knew is that he had made this movie Dolomite. And luckily I scrounged around record stores, found some Rudy Ray Moore records, discovered he was a comedian. I was lucky to find out that he had a vocal career in the 50s and 60s. And just through that constant digging, I stumbled upon an address. It turned out it was Rudy's. And we were in touch from, I think, probably around 93, 94 through the end of his life. And I started trying to promote him any way I could. We developed RudyRayMoore.com so that I could put his appearances on there and try to sell merchandise. And so that kind of was like my way of giving that information that I so desperately was trying to find and make it readily available. And we started working on the book officially in 2001. And just through all that time, it really was a struggle to get the full and complete story. And as it took me longer to get the book completed, then other things started to happen, like his movie started to get re-released. of course, Dolomite is my name coming out. So all of these other things that were coming through, I felt it was necessary to make sure that all those things came to fruition so they can be included in the book, so that it literally is like the life story from A to Z. Rudy, his life, career, and his legacy are all part of that story.
That's incredible that it's just a movie getting passed out the window from your buddy. It lands you in where you are now, being like the guy working with him and being in charge of everything. That's interesting way that things worked out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I should be angry at my friend or thank him. You know, I mean, it's you that small thing, you know, to change the whole trajectory of my life in so many ways. But you know, I'm proud to be, you know, hopefully I'm the main guy, you know, waving the Rudy Ray Moore flag, and I really think it's an inspiring story that people can get a lot from. He just wasn't, it wasn't just, you know, some people are turned off by the explicitness of his comedy and his material, but again, those are just a tiny piece of what he had to offer, and that tenacity and that belief in himself that propelled him throughout his entire life. You know, he had a lot more failures than he had successes, but, you know, one of those things about him is that he just never gave up on himself.
And again, Mark Jason Murray's with us. He's the author of the upcoming book, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, the authorized biography of Rudy Ray Moore. And Mark, you know, at the time in the 90s, when you got in touch with him, you know, you really started to see the effect that he had on pop culture, you know, music and films. How did he feel about, you know, that, seeing so many people influenced by him around that time?
He actually enjoyed it. You know, all the rappers were coming up and they were starting to name drop him and sample him. Two Live Crew, you know, all those guys literally just, you know, they were fans of his when they were children, because they were sneaking listens to their dad's records. So they were influenced by that, and hearing that braggadocio and that swagger that he had on his material, and brought that forward into their early works. So luckily for him, he had kind of been forgotten in the 80s. And so when these kids started doing, you know, rap started getting big and he started getting referenced and sampled, it really brought him into a new generation, but also reminded the older generation that he was still relevant and he was still around. So that was a thing. He always found it interesting too, that through probably at the beginning of the 90s, he started to see the majority of his fan base become largely white. And so his concerts would be, you know, a lot of white kids there. So he thought that was an interesting transition. And in a way, to me, it shows that diversity that came later with his material, when people were able to, I guess, appreciate it more, and also start to understand the historical relevance of that material that he brought forward, which is largely known as a toast. They call it a toast or a tall tale. Bringing those street stories forward into a recorded medium that hadn't been done before. So that's just, again, another part of what his legacy is he brought a cultural, significant storytelling tradition that was literally from the streets. He brought that to popular culture, that in a commercialized way that no one had ever done before.
Yeah, and one thing I like about the book here that's coming up, you know, I'm a big fan of the movies, but I think more people maybe are familiar with just the movies and not so much with his albums. And, you know, you've got to great lengths to get all that stuff in there. You mentioned he was doing actual singing and then more of the comedy albums after that, and that's all going to be documented in the book as well. So I think that's great. People kind of get to delve more into that side of him.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much more to the story. The book's also got a huge discography. I mean, Rudy literally had hundreds and hundreds of items that were released throughout his career. There's still actually a few elusive items that I've never been physically able to capture from my archives, but all that stuff is documented in there, and it really just shows the amount of the massive amount of work that he was involved in throughout his entire life. I mean, to pretty much his dying day, he was all about performing. I mean, he even would perform in the evenings, you know, right at the end when his health was failing. He was in nursing homes and things, and he would even sing and perform for the other residents of the nursing home.
That's awesome. And of course, now this is perfect timing for the book. A lot of people talking about Rudy, with that movie with Eddie Murphy that just came out. You had a hand in making that happen too, I read.
Yeah, I was already familiar with the writers of Dolomite as my name because they were fans, and I had done some discussions and interviews with Larry Karaszewski, who's the co-writer of Dolomite as my name. And when that project finally started to happen, they had talked about this back in the early 2000s with Eddie and Rudy when Rudy was still alive, and it just didn't come together. Eddie would joke that he probably came off a failure like Pluto Nash or something, and they weren't, the studios would laugh in his face if they wanted to do a movie about Rudy Ray Moore that no one knew about. So when the project came together, then Larry got in touch and said, if we're going to make this movie, then we need to have the, I guess, authority of Rudy Ray Moore involved. And so I was able to provide them with my research and my book in progress, and they used a lot of that to help build an amazing script. And they kind of laughed that sometimes it's nice to have a guy on hand that you can just send a text message to or call and say, what kind of car did this guy drive back in 1972, and have that answer instead of having to try to research it at length on your own. But the movie came out phenomenal, much better than I expected it to. It also did something that I never could do with this book, is it put Rudy Ray Moore and Dolomite into pop culture in a way that the book couldn't. I never in my life dreamed that I would hear Eddie Murphy talking about Rudy Ray Moore on Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah, it's definitely well received, and of course, a lot of people are probably going to go get the book now to learn more about Rudy Ray Moore. And again, the Kickstarter is going on till April 15th. Is there anything else, Mark, that you're working on? Maybe after the book, something else we should look for?
If you're looking for the Kickstarter, the easiest way to get there is rudyraymore.com. That'll take you to all the social media pages that I run for Rudy, and also to get you to that Kickstarter. My next book is actually another biography about Gloria Leonard, who was an adult actress through the late 70s and 80s. She was a big proponent of free speech, worked as a magazine publisher. She was also a mother at the time all of this was going on. I think her story is also a very inspiring one as well. When we start talking about being a feminist and things of that nature. So that's another authorized piece. This one will not take me 30 years, I swear. I literally I have all the material I need. So once I can get, Rudy's book out there to the, in the fans' hands, then I can really start getting to work on this one. And hopefully that will be another, satisfying project.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've put in my pledge. I'm getting the Disco Godfather soundtrack, I believe. So definitely excited for that. Yeah. And again, thank you, Mark, for your time. I'm definitely looking forward to the book and looking forward to maybe talking with you again sometime.
Thank you, Dustin. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And again, that was author Mark Jason Murray and his new book, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, the authorized biography of Rudy Ray Moore, will be available soon.